This is the book distribution headquarters. Is that true? Something like that? Has it been successful? How many? You have a number? 13,500 for the month. For the festival, for the marathon. Did your children help? Yeah. Yes? Did you do that? Yes? Did you like it? Looking forward to next year already, right? Or this next marathon. You have some creative ideas? Kids always have creative ideas. You have some creative ideas? Not yet? By this question, you'll start thinking of some creative ideas. Share them with mom and dad after you come up with some creative ideas. They'll go, wow, that was a creative idea. Okay? All it takes is just wind him up a little bit and let him loose. No, it's just one of those things that adults may not think of, children will think of, and once it's their idea, they own it, and they'll figure out a way to do it. And it's like, wow, that was really a good idea. Why didn't we think of that? Because we're not kids. We're counting on you. Lord Chaitanya's counting on you. You're his little instrument out there in the mission of Lord Chaitanya land. You'll come up with something. Okay, so this is a continuation of preparing ourselves for Gaur Purnima. You like kirtan, right? You like book distribution too? Not as much. Huh? Give you a kirtan and you're there. Book distribution and it's not the same enthusiasm. Okay. Gaur Purnima, the appearance day of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is coming. I particularly appreciate how Lord Chaitanya organized things. First Advaitacharya, then Nityananda, then a big gap, so we can fill up that big gap with hearing the childhood pastimes at the beginning part of Chaitanya Bhagavata. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, which came chronologically later, Krishnadas Kaviraj, with deference to who he was looking up to, Vrindavan Das Thakur is the Vyasadeva of Gaur Leela, he only touched on making brief comment on Lord Chaitanya's childhood pastimes because Vrindavan Das had already elaborately described them. Well, he says like that. We just 2 days ago we were discussing the scholarly Leela between Lord Chaitanya and Digvijay Pandit Keshava Kashmiri. And it is elaborately discussed in Chaitanya Bhagavata. However, there's some details, very fascinating details, that are not in Chaitanya Bhagavata that are found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So though he says, I'm just going to touch on it, he writes practically a whole chapter to describe those details. Because the scholarship of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was grammar, because grammar is the gateway or doorway or entryway into the Vedas, say it negatively, without going through the gateway, without understanding the rules and application of the rules of grammar and logic, then access to the wisdom of the Vedas is restricted, or one is just not eligible even to study. And therefore, the young boys, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was 8 years old, that's when he received Upanayana. But prior to Upanayana, that's like, now you're entitled to study the Vedas. Because before that, you have to have the fundamentals. So he had those fundamentals, and then he applied those fundamentals. And in the discussion with Keshava Kashmiri, he more than applied the fundamentals. He described the violations, qualities and faults, guna and dosha. And Keshava Kashmiri said, there's no faults, it's only qualities. So, very nice qualities, this and that, these qualities. And here's some faults, this and this and this. And with lots of detail that, for me, not knowing Sanskrit, it's just way over my head. I don't understand the application. I can read it and say, okay. But Keshava Kashmiri certainly understood, because he was a super scholar. Very, 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 very learned. We hear, I was thinking more about this, in Chaitanya Bhagavata, specifically, Vrindavan Das says that he was a worshipper of Saraswati. Now, at least for me, hearing Saraswati means the goddess of learning, Saraswati. But he's specific, saying he doesn't make the distinction between the demigoddess Saraswati and the internal potency who is residing on the chest of Vishnu, Saraswati. But he specifically says residing on the chest of Vishnu, Saraswati. So he was a worshipper of the internal potency, and after he became freed from pride by the mercy of Nimai, who did it very respectfully, both Chaitanya Bhagavata and Chaitanya Charitamrita to describe how artfully and gracefully, and it's one of the things that it's hard to come by, to be a cultured person where you can say what needs to be said very gracefully. It's not easy. At least for me, it's not easy. It's refinement. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exercised that refinement. He didn't insult him. He didn't, I defeated you. He didn't do any of that taunting and humiliating. But Digvijay Keshava Kashmiri was humiliated. The students were going to laugh, and he checked them. No, he's an exalted person. And so after he accepted defeat and was told by Saraswati to go apologize, fall at the feet of this 16-year-old boy, and beg forgiveness. So that happened. And Nimai was happy. And later, history says, Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he became a follower of the Nimbarka Sampradaya. He became an acharya in the Nimbarka Sampradaya. It's right in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It gives the cyclic line. It seems like it's just a cut and paste from Bhaktisiddhanta's commentary, that kind of detail. And in one of the libraries that are digitally available for devotees, there's a Sanskrit copy of one of his writings from the Dvaita Sampradaya, or Nimbarka Sampradaya. It's about Krishna, but it's poetic, but it's about Krishna. Now, in the Dvaita Advaita Sampradaya, there's very strong emphasis, very similar to Lord Chaitanya's teachings. It's a strong emphasis on Radharani, the mood of the gopis, Madhurya Bhav, and the special position of Radharani. So he put two and two together, comes up 4. He was a worshipper of, according to Vrindavan Das, the goddess of fortune, Saraswati, who resides on the chest of Vishnu. So he became a follower of the Nimbarka Sampradaya, that they revere Radharani in a very special way. Just natural. It matched his, evolution of being a worshipper of Saraswati to being now a worshipper of Radharani. Radha Krishna, but strong emphasis on Radharani. Now, something came to my attention just this morning, so I'll share it with you. It's related. Giriraj Swami has recently published a book that he's been working on for 20 years, maybe. The history of the Juhu Temple, because of his intimate knowledge. So it's a published book. I don't have a copy, but someone forwarded to me a little section where Sumati Mararji, the head of the Scindia steam line, was a receiver of the Back to Godhead magazine, a gratuitous copy because of all the service that she had rendered. And she was an intimate, very close, I should say, close follower of Vallabha Acharya. And the Back to Godhead magazine, somewhere in one of their publications, published the discussion between Lord Chaitanya and Vallabhacharya, where Vallabhacharya was scolded by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for being a prostitute, or one who considers, that section, one who considers themselves not faithful to Swami is no better than a prostitute. And Swami in this case meant Sridhar Swami, but a prostitute is one that doesn't have regard for her husband. So it caused a big stir. Sumati Mararji wrote a long letter, very philosophical letter to Prabhupada, and she was very disturbed. And so it's in Giriraj Maharaj's book. And then Prabhupada had to, deal with it. And it wasn't just her, it was 2 other people, in their main temple and in the Bombay branch of the Vallabhacharya. Prabhupada had relationships with all those people, and they became really upset. And Prabhupada had to deal with it. Now, I'm mentioning this because it has relationship with the Keshava Kashmiri scene, where how should we take what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did with Keshava Kashmiri, and how should we take what Prabhupada did with Vallabhacharya? And how should we regard Vallabhacharya? We could be immature. That's not a good idea, to be immature, and go, na 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 na, like that. Look down our nose and hold ourselves in a special position above the Vallabhacharya people and Vallabhacharya himself. And so Prabhupada had to explain, and you can read it when you get your copy, or borrow from somebody when you get a copy, they get theirs, where Prabhupada explains a few things in writing, and so parts of those letters to those people, Giriraj Maharaj somehow managed to get into his book. And he did other things. He sent different people to go visit those individuals and offer respect, etc., etc., etc. But his explanation was that there was a very intimate relationship, a very intimate, in an intimate relationship between friend and friend. Friend may say something in friendship that sounds like, what? But it was in friendship. It wasn't na 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 na. It wasn't, it wasn't insulting. So devotees that are immature may take an immature position. We're up there and Vallabhacharya is down there. That's not good. That's offense. And what Prabhupada said, in at least according to this, I just read it quickly. Somebody sent me a digital section from that just this morning. Prabhupada said, just as you were taking exception that Vallabhacharya was being criticized, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took exception that Sridhar Swami was being criticized. And it was between Lord Chaitanya and Vallabhacharya. It was with affection and love, in great regard. And I take it that you're speaking to me in the same way, with love and affection and great regard. Because we have the utmost regard, as did Lord Chaitanya have the utmost regard for Vallabhacharya. So it's not to demean him. So Lord Chaitanya was being very careful with Keshava Kashmiri. He didn't demean him. When his immature students were going to laugh at him, he checked them. No, he's exalted. And our subsequent acharyas in disciplic line, they had great regard for Vallabhacharya in their writings. Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami both specifically extol Vallabhacharya. Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas, he drew many passages from Vallabhacharya. In Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports, that was pointed out to Sumati Miraji. Prabhupada quoted Vallabhacharya. He has great regard for Vallabhacharya. So don't take it as it was not intended. But then he scolded the Back to Godhead editor who published it. He said you have to be more sensitive to how people might perceive something that you publish. So as devotees, there's lessons. What's the lesson? One lesson is when we hear elevated persons discussing between one another, don't bring it down to your level. They're exchanging in ways that we don't have the adhikar to exchange. Don't think that there was any lack of affection between Lord Chaitanya and Vallabhacharya, and we should not similarly think ourselves snobby and we're better than them because da-da-da-da-da-da. Not like that. Not like that. It's not like that. Within the Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there's many lessons. There are cultural lessons, there are philosophical lessons. There are many things that can help us reach the goal, which he came to give, which is love of God. Freely take it. But, freely take it, then we have to be fit recipients. We have to learn from him how he conducted himself and don't misinterpret how he conducted himself in all regards. It's problematic if, on the one hand, we appreciate Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the greatest gift, and on the other hand, we lack humility. They don't go together. The person who has the greatest treasure and is proud, that's material. It means you didn't understand what that treasure is. And so this is the point of just having some discussion with another devotee today. Gratitude is the seed of love. And gratitude means I recognize this wonderful thing that it's like, Sanatana Goswami and the touchstone. That's the whole story. It was, the material thing was over there, and the real thing was the holy name. So how are we going to advance in bhakti besides numerical chanting and so forth? Following the vidhis. How do we go beyond the vidhis? Well, we don't go beyond them in the sense of leave them behind, but go to higher stages of bhakti. How do we awaken bhakti at a deeper level? That's a good question. It's many of us run into that wall when we've been practicing for some time and it seems like we're still rowing the boat and not getting very far in bhakti life. So it continues the same way that it starts. This is my evaluation. It was something I shared with a devotee this morning. Gratitude. And I'm sure it comes out. I haven't read the book because I didn't get a copy yet. I will one day. I have so many books to read. But Giriraj Maharaj is effusive with his gratitude to Prabhupada. Naturally so. He had so much association and he was always in that mood. So it comes out. His love for Prabhupada is the seed, this gratitude for what Prabhupada was giving, and the love that with which Prabhupada gave it to everyone liberally. In his particular service was the Juhu temple. But he was always like that. He was always like that. I'll read the Chaitanya Bhagavata, but just a little personal sharing. The first temple that I joined or entered the ashram of was the Boston Temple, and Giriraj Maharaj was the one who trained me in my services. It was the World Sankirtan Party, and there were, he was one of the ones that was selected to go. So he had a few services, and he trained me up how to do the boga shopping and how to do the flower purchasing. So, I got a close-up picture of Giriraj Maharaj when he was quite young, and other things. So, the mood of just self-sacrifice to whatever Prabhupada wanted was his life. And still is. And he has become an advanced devotee as a result. And so if we want to go beyond just the vidhis of, not beyond, but, go to deeper stages of bhakti than just the vidhis of bhakti, because it's come up a number of times in the past month, people saying different things about bhakti has become something of a routine. Or doing arti, I feel it become mechanical. I'm doing, but it's becoming. You get the idea. So how to awaken the bhakti aspect, same way as it gets started. We receive something, recognize what that something is, and you feel something. And you want to do something because you feel something. That's bhakti. The Krishna, let me reciprocate with the giver of this gift. Okay, so now we're going to go to chapter 14 of Chaitanya Bhagavata. And we're reading about The starting with text. I read too much yesterday. I'm going to start with text 98. And here we go. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he went on a teaching. He wasn't a Sankirtan journey. It was a teaching expedition with some students to East Bengal. At least that's how it's translated. Now Bangladesh, but Bengal, the eastern part of Bengal. And he was having a great time. And the persons there were having a great time. And they came by the thousands from all over the place to hear from him. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha enjoyed scholastic pastimes when staying in East Bengal. Meanwhile, in Navadvip, Lakshmi, this is the transcendental goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, the consort of Narayan. Lakshmi was in great distress due to separation from the Lord. She did not reveal this to anyone. She kept always engaged in the service of Mother Sachi without eating anything since the Lord's departure. He was gone for several months. She accepted some rice only in name, for she was deeply distressed in separation from the Lord. She passed the nights alone, crying incessantly. Her heart found no relief for even a moment. Eventually, Lakshmi could no longer tolerate separation from the Lord, and she desired to join him. Lakshmi, in a replica body on the bank of the Ganges, she left a replica body on the bank of the Ganges in this world and went invisibly to the side of the Lord. Means she left her body, or a replica body. Thus, she took the lotus feet of the Lord in her heart and in deep meditation departed to the bank of the Ganges. I cannot describe Mother Sachi's grief. Even wood melted on hearing her cry. Since I am unable to narrate such distressful pastimes, I have described them only in brief. All the devotees were grief-stricken on hearing about Lakshmi's disappearance, and they duly performed her last rites. After staying in East Bengal for some time, the Lord desired to return home. When the people of East Bengal heard that the Lord is returning home, they brought various gifts and wealth according to their capacity. The people in Bangladesh aren't known to be really wealthy, but whatever they had. They happily gave the Lord gold, silver, water pots, asanas, colorful blankets, various clothing, and whatever other fine items they had in their homes. Lord Gauranga glanced mercifully at everyone as they accepted their gifts. After taking leave from them, Lord Gauranga happily started for home. Many students came to Navadvip with the Lord to continue studying under him. Meanwhile, a pious, swan-like Brahmana named Tapan Mishra. This is the introduction. And then Lord sends him to Benares after their meeting. So, Tapan Mishra arrived there. He was confused about the goal of life and the means for attaining it. Moreover, he could not find anyone to clear his confusion. He silently chanted his Krishna mantra day and night, but since he was not practicing other important limbs of devotional service, he could not achieve peace. While disturbed in this way, late one night, the fortunate Brahmana had an auspicious dream. A demigod appeared before Brahmana Tapan Mishra and began telling him some confidential topics. You want to hear them? How about your daughter? You want to hear them? Okay. It's confidential, though. But you can hear. Oh, sober Brahmana, please listen, steady your mind, and do not worry. Go to Nimai Pandit. He will explain to you the goal of life and the means for attaining it. He's not an ordinary human being. He's Narayan himself. He's performing his pastimes as a human being to deliver the people of the world. Don't disclose these facts to anyone. He must have disclosed it to somebody because we're reading it. For this information is confidential even to the Vedas. If you do, you'll be unhappy birth after birth. As the demigod disappeared, the Brahmana woke up from his sleep. After seeing that auspicious dream, he began to cry. Recovering from his trance, he exclaimed, "What great luck!" Then he immediately left to see the Lord. As the enchanting Sri Gaurasundar was sitting with his students on the bank of the Padmavati river, Tapan Mishra came there and fell at his feet. He got up before everyone with his hands folded. The Brahmana said, "I'm the most fallen wretch. Please deliver me from the material existence by your merciful glance. I am ignorant of the goal of life and the means for attaining it. Therefore, kindly explain this to me. I do not find any pleasure in material sense enjoyment. Therefore, O merciful Lord, please tell me how I can find relief." The Lord replied, "O Brahmana, what can be said about your good fortune since you wish to worship Krishna? That is quite sufficient. Worship of the Supreme Lord, however, is difficult to achieve. The Lord himself personally teaches the principles of religion for the age." Then he quotes scripture. He incarnates to establish 4 different religious principles in the 4 different ages, and thereafter he returns to his own abode to deliver the pious, annihilate the miscreants, as well as reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. And then that's Bhagavad Gita. Here's Gargamuni, name-giving ceremony, Canto 10, Chapter 8. Your son Krishna appears as an incarnation in every millennium. In the past, he assumed 3 different colors, white, red, and yellow, and now he has appeared in a blackish color. There's an explanation in brackets. This is from Laghu Bhagavatamrita. In other Dwarpa Yugas, he's not always blackish, he's of green complexion, like the color of a parrot, Shuka. All such incarnations have now assembled in Krishna. Of course, that's a little different translation than Prabhupada's. The Yuga Dharma for the age of Kali is the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. The 4 religious principles of the 4 ages are all means for deliverance of the conditioned souls. Another scriptural reference, Bhagavatam. Whatever result was obtained in Sat Yuga by meditation on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwarpa Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Therefore, the essence of all religious principles in the age of Kali is the sacrifice of chanting the holy names of the Lord. One cannot be delivered by following any other religious principles. The Vedas are unable to fully describe the glories of one who chants the Lord's names day and night, while even eating. That's pretty challenging. And sleeping. It's also challenging. Please listen, dear Mishra. There is no other austerity or sacrifice prescribed in the age of Kali. One who worships Krishna is most fortunate. Therefore, go back to your home and worship Krishna with full attention, giving up all duplicity. By congregationally chanting the holy name, you achieve everything, including the goal of life and the means for attaining it. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. We all know that verse. And then text 145, it gives the whole mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This verse is called the Mahamantra. It contains 16 holy names of the Lord composed in 32 syllables. If you continually chant this Mahamantra, the seed of love of God will sprout in your heart. Then you'll understand the goal of life and the process for achieving it. After hearing these instructions from the mouth of the Lord, Tapan Mishra, the best of the Brahmanas, repeatedly offered obeisances to the Lord. Tapan Mishra then said, "Please allow me to live with you." And the Lord replied, "You should immediately go to Varanasi. I will meet you there and explain to you the truths about the goal of life and the process for attaining it." So that's what happened. When Lord Chaitanya was traveling from Puri to Vrindavan and back from Vrindavan to Puri, he stayed at the house of Tapan Mishra and gave his association there and had discussions along with Chandrasekhar Acharya, another great Vaishnava from Navadvip. The Lord then embraced him, and out of ecstatic love the hairs on Tapan Mishra stood on end. Tapan Mishra felt spiritual ecstasy after receiving the Lord of Vaikuntha's embrace. One can only imagine. At the time of departure, he caught hold of the Lord's feet and confidentially described the incident of his dream. The Lord smiled and said, "Whatever you have dreamt is true, but don't disclose this to anyone." The Lord then forbade Tapan Mishra from disclosing accounts of his dream to anyone. And in an auspicious moment he smiled and got up to leave. In this way, Lord Gauranga purified the land of East Bengal and then returned home. Acting like an ordinary person, the Lord returned home in the evening with a large load of gifts that he had received. Upon arriving home, the Lord offered obeisances at the feet of his mother and then gave her the gifts and wealth. The Lord and his students immediately went to the Ganges to take bath. Mother Sachi immediately began to cook, although she and the other family members were all aggrieved. The Lord is the instructing spiritual master for everyone. He therefore led his students in offering repeated obeisances to the Ganges. After enjoying the beauty of the Ganges and sporting in her waters for some time, the Lord returned home. Lord Gauranga then performed his exemplary daily worship and sat down to eat. After the Lord of Vaikuntha ate with satisfaction, he went and sat at the door of the temple room. At that time, Nimai's family members came and sat around him to speak with him in their company. While laughing and conversing, the Lord described how he happily spent his days in East Bengal. The Lord burst into laughter as he imitated the pronunciation and speaking of the people of East Bengal. Knowing that the Lord would feel distress, his relatives did not disclose to him about the disappearance of Lakshmi. After passing some time with the Lord, the relatives left for their respective homes. The Lord laughed and joked as he sat and chewed betel. Meanwhile, the grief-stricken Mother Sachi remained out of his sight inside the house. The Lord then personally went before his mother and saw that she was looking morose. He then sweetly asked his mother, "Oh, mother, I see you are very sad. Please tell me the reason. I successfully returned from a distant place, and you should be happy. But on the contrary, I find you are distressed. Please tell me the reason." Hearing her son's words, Mother Sachi looked at the ground and began to weep. Overcome by grief, she was unable to reply. We're almost done with the chapter. The Lord said, "Dear mother, I know everything. Perhaps your daughter-in-law has met with some misfortune?" Then everyone replied, "Listen, O Pandit, your wife has indeed left this world." When Lord Gauranga heard about the disappearance of his wife, he bent his head down and remained silent for a while. The Lord, who is the personification of the Vedas, accepted the misery of separation from his wife and remained silent. After he lamented as an ordinary man for some time, he began to speak with patience. What's he going to say? Who in this material world is the husband, son, or friend of whom? Actually, no one is related with anyone. Nescience alone is the cause of this misunderstanding. The Lord said, "Oh, mother, why are you feeling so sad? Who can check what is destined to happen? Such is the current of time. No one is related to anyone else, and therefore the Vedas declare that this material world is temporary. All universes are under the control of the Supreme Lord. Who, other than the Supreme Lord, can unite or separate people? Therefore, whatever has happened by the desire of the Supreme Lord was destined. Why should you lament? Who is more fortunate and pious than a woman who leaves her body before her husband dies?" In this way, the Lord pacified his mother and then carried on with his duties in the company of his friends. On hearing the Lord's nectarian words, everyone was relieved of all lamentation. Thus, Sri Gaura-Hari, the Lord of Vaikuntha, happily enjoys scholastic pastimes in Navadvip. Accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. Now, according to the schedule, I'm supposed to read some additional verses from the next chapter. You want to guess what the next chapter is? Without looking, if you have the text. Mother Sachi, she's primarily attached to her son. But in her mind, it's incomplete without her son being married. So comes marriage number 2. So just like Narayana has these two, Shri and Bhu, well, the third is Nila, but according to our Gaudiya Vaisnavacharyas, Nila is the Dham, the Navadvip itself. Navadvip Dham is Nila. So Shri and Bhu. Next comes Bhudevi, or Lakshmi Priya, Vishnu Priya. It's a long chapter, so we're not going to cover the whole chapter. All glories to Sri Gaurachandra and all glories to Sri Nityananda. Please give your lotus feet in charity to my heart. All glories to Sri Gauranga and his associates. One who hears the topics of Lord Chaitanya attains devotional service of the Lord. As the Lord remained absorbed in his scholastic pastimes in this way, he lived incognito without revealing himself to anyone. The Lord performed his daily worship in the early morning, and after offering obeisances to his mother, he left for school. Mukunda Sanjay was the Lord's servant for many lifetimes. His son was known as Purushottam Das. Gaurachandra daily went to teach at the house of this fortunate person. The Lord arrived first and sat at the Chandi Mandap. Thereafter, the students would gradually arrive there. During this period, sometimes, by chance, a student would forget to mark his forehead with tilak. As Sanatan Dharma himself, the Lord establishes the principles of religion. In order to protect people's religious principles, he would not tolerate any transgression. The very moment such a delinquent appeared, the Lord would put him to such shame that he would never again come without first completing his morning worship, because the tilak is supplied prior to worship, and if you don't have tilak, it means you didn't do your worship. You don't go to school unless you do your worship in a Brahmana culture. The Lord would say, "Oh, brother, why do I not see any tilak on your forehead? What is your explanation?" The Vedas say that if a Brahmana's forehead is not decorated with tilak, it is good as a crematorium. I can understand that you have not performed your daily worship. Therefore, dear brother, your morning has become fruitless. Go back home and perform your morning duties again. Then you may return to study. In this way, all the Lord's students were conscientious about performing their religious duties. Like this, The Lord jokingly found fault with everyone. No one was spared from the Lord's teasing remarks. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, never joked with others' wives. As soon as he saw a woman coming, he would immediately give her ample room to pass without talking. The Lord particularly teased the residents of Srihata by mimicking their pronunciation. In anger, they responded, "Ay, where are you from? Tell us the truth. Tell us, aren't your parents and forefathers born in Srihata? You yourself are born as the son of a resident of Srihata. So why do you tease us?" The Lord did not heed what they said. Rather, he would continue to mimic their pronunciation and manner of speaking. He would continue to tease the residents of Srihata until they became furious. Eventually, one of them would chase the Lord in great anger. Being unable to catch him, however, he was frustrated and began abusing the Lord with harsh words. Sometimes someone caught the Lord by his dhoti and took him to the local Muslim authority to register a complaint. Ultimately, the Lord's friends would come and negotiate a settlement. On another day, the Lord secretly went outside the house of a resident of Srihata. As soon as he got the opportunity, he entered the house, broke some dry gourds, and then ran away in fear. In this way, the Lord created mischief for everyone, but he did not even look at a woman from the corner of his eyes. It is well known throughout the world that the Lord, in this incarnation, did not even hear the word, quote, woman, unquote. Therefore, great personalities do not offer prayers addressing Lord Gauranga as Gauranga Nagara, or the enjoyer of damsels. Although all kinds of prayers may be offered to the Supreme Lord, intelligent persons glorify only those characteristics that a particular incarnation manifests. In this way, the Lord of Vaikuntha enjoyed his scholastic pastimes in the house of Mukunda Sanjay. The Lord happily taught while sitting amidst various groups of his students. Sometimes, when the need arose, the Lord had a servant massage his head with medicated oil while he continued giving his unique explanations. The Lord, who is the reservoir of transcendental qualities, would teach from early morning until noon. Then he would go for a bath in the Ganges. In this way, the Lord regularly taught and studied up to midnight. Now, how did he know when it was noon? Path of the sun somehow. Really tuned in. Therefore, whoever studied under the Lord for 1 year would become a learned scholar who understood the conclusions of the scriptures. As the Lord thus enjoyed scholastic pastimes, Mother Sachi continually meditated on getting her son remarried. Mother Sachi continually searched throughout Navadvip for a suitable bride for her son. In Navadvip there resided one most fortunate and compassionate devotee named Sri Sanatana Mishra. He was simple-hearted, magnanimous, expert in entertaining guests, and always engaged in welfare activities. Moreover, he was truthful. He controlled his senses. He had a good birth, and he was famous as a Raja Pandit. Sanatana Mishra hailed from a well-to-do family, so he easily maintained many other people. Sanatana Mishra's daughter had all auspicious characteristics. She was like the personification of Lakshmi, the mother of the universe. As soon as Mother Sachi saw her, she immediately thought that she would be a suitable bride for her son. Though those of you that are parents, you can relate to this. From her childhood, that girl took bath in the Ganges 2 or 3 times a day. She had no engagement other than serving her father, mother, and Lord Vishnu. She regularly met and offered her humble obeisances to Mother Sachi at the Ganges bathing ghat. Mother Sachi happily blessed her. "May Krishna bless you with a suitable husband." Then, as Mother Sachi took her bath, she thought, "May this girl be married with my son." Sanatana Mishra and his relatives also desired that she be married to the Lord. One day, Sachi was inspired to call Kashinath Pandit to her home. Thereupon, she said to him, "Dear sir, please listen to my request. Go tell Sanatan Mishra that if he desires, he may give his daughter to my son." Kashinath Pandit immediately left for the house of Sanatan Mishra while chanting the names of Durga and Krishna. Seeing Kashinath, Sanatan Mishra respectfully offered him an asana. Feeling greatly honored, Sanatan Mishra completed all formalities and inquired, "Dear brother, what brings you here?" Kashinath replied, "I have a proposal for you. If you find it proper, then please accept it. Please give your daughter's hand in marriage to Vishwambar Pandit. I feel it is a perfect match. He is a qualified husband for your daughter, and your chaste daughter is a qualified wife for him. Vishnupriya and Nimai Pandit are as suitable a match as Krishna and Rukmini were." After hearing the proposal, Sanatan Mishra discussed it with his wife and relatives to find out their opinion. They replied, "What is the need for further discussion? You should immediately arrange for the marriage." The Raja Pandit then happily spoke to Kashinath Pandit. "Oh, Brahmana, I will certainly give my daughter in marriage to Vishwambar Pandit. If my family is fortunate, then my daughter will be married to him. So please go there and inform them of my decision. I again confirm that I have accepted the proposal." Feeling satisfied, Kashinath Mishra returned to Mother Sachi and told her everything. Mother Sachi was pleased to hear that her proposal was accepted, and she began to make the necessary arrangements. When the Lord's students heard of his marriage arrangement, they were all filled with joy. Buddhimanta Khan was the first to speak. "I will bear the entire expenditure of this marriage." Mukunda Sanjay then said, "Listen, my dear friend, if you bear all expense, then what will I do?" Buddhimanta Khan replied, "Listen, my dear brother, this marriage will not be like a Brahmana's marriage, which is generally very simple. I will make such arrangements for the marriage of Nimai Pandit that he will appear like a prince in the eyes of the people." Thereafter, everyone agreed on an auspicious day and time to observe the Adivas ceremony. A huge pandal was erected with banana trees placed at the four directions. They decorated the marriage arena with water pots, ghee lamps, rice, paddy, yogurt, mango leaves, and other auspicious items. They further decorated the arena with designs drawn with colored powders. All the Vaishnavas, Brahmanas, and respectable people of Navadvip were invited. Come in the afternoon and chew the pan of the Adivas ceremony. In the afternoon, on the day of Adivas, the musicians all began to play their instruments. The playing of various instruments like Mridanga Shanai, Jaya Dhaka, and Kartals created a tumultuous sound. The professional, I'm reading fast because there's a lot of verses. Sorry about that. The professional blessers began to recite prayers, and the chaste women made auspicious sounds. You know that sound, right? When you're in Mayapur and the conch blows before Mangalarti and the ladies start making that sound. Ululating, it's called, or something like that. As the Brahmanas chanted mantras, Vishwambar, the crest jewel of the Brahmanas, came and sat in their midst. The Brahmanas sat in groups around the Lord, and in this way everyone was overjoyed at heart. A guru, sandalwood paste, pan, and flower garlands were brought out and offered to the Brahmanas. Garlands were placed on their heads. Their bodies were smeared with sandalwood paste, and each Brahmana was given a box of pan. Nadia was full of Brahmana families, so innumerable Brahmanas were present there. No one could count how many came and went. Among them, some greedy Brahmanas received their gifts and then returned a second time in different dress to again receive gifts. In the ensuing commotion, they thus received sandalwood paste pan flower garlands a second time. Everyone was intoxicated with ecstasy, and thus unable to recognize one another, the Lord also smiled and gave instructions. Quote, "Give sandalwood paste and garlands 3 times to everyone. Don't worry about the expenditure. Give freely to everyone." By this instruction, the Lord indirectly forbade everyone from taking again and again. The Lord continued, "If a Brahmin is caught cheating, he'll be criticized and thus disgraced." We're almost done. Being affectionate to the Brahmanas, the Lord considered, if they are given 3 times, then they will be fully satisfied. As the Brahmanas were happy to receive those gifts 3 times, so none of them further tried to cheat. Whew. In this way, no one could understand how the Lord was served by Anantashesh in the form of garland, sandalwood paste, and pan. What to speak of all the gifts people received? If the gifts that fell on the ground during distribution were collected, it would have been sufficient for 5 marriages. Everyone's heart was filled with ecstasy, and they exclaimed, "The Adivas ceremony was glorious." We have seen such an Adivas ceremony performed even in the houses of the wealthiest men of Navadvip. We have never seen anyone distribute sandalwood paste, garlands, and pans so indiscriminately. Carrying ingredients for the Adivas ceremony, Sanatana Mishra joyfully arrived. He came accompanied by Brahmanas, family members, musicians, dancers, and singers. Following the Vedic injunctions, he then happily applied sandalwood pulp to the Lord's forehead at the auspicious moment. At that time, there arose tumultuous chanting in glorification of Lord Hari, and everyone began reciting mantras. The chaste women made auspicious sounds of Ulu Dvani. That's the phrase, Ulu Dvani. The singing and playing of musical instruments filled the entire house with ecstasy. After completing the Adivas ceremony, Sanatana Mishra, the king of the Brahmanas, returned home. Meanwhile, the Lord's family members went to the bride's house to perform the Adivas ceremony there. Family members of both the bride and groom also performed the rituals that were in current practice. Early the next morning, the Lord took bath in the Ganges and then worshipped Lord Vishnu. Thereafter, he sat with his family members to perform the Nandi Mukha ceremony. Anybody know what that is? Nandi Mukha ceremony. It's probably in Chaitanya Bhagavata commentary. Nandi Mukha. If there's somebody listening that has an access, you can send a text message. It's text number 110. What's a Nandi Mukha ceremony? Many musical instruments, dancing and singing created a tumult, and on all sides the sweet sounds of triumphal rejoicing arose. Water pots, patty, yogurt, ghee lamps, and mango leaves were placed inside and outside of the house. On all sides, various colored flags waved, and strings of mango leaves were tied to banana trees. Mother Sachi and other chaste women then began to perform the various rituals that were in current practice. Sachi first happily worshipped the Ganges, and then she went along with a group of musicians to worship the goddess Shashti. Shashti. 4 more verses for this session. After worshipping Shashti, she went to the houses of her relatives, where she performed the rituals in current practice before returning home. Thereafter, Sachi satisfied the women with puffed rice, bananas, oil pan, and vermilion. By the influence of the Supreme Lord, all the items multiplied unlimitedly. That Sachi also repeatedly gave the gifts to each woman. The ladies all appeared to have taken bath in oil. There was not a single woman who did not feel complete satisfaction. So they're not married yet, but we're going to have to wait for that. Tomorrow evening. So, you found it? You have it. The word Nandimukha karma is a combination of Nandi, or glorification or good fortune, and Mukha, or principle, or Nandi, auspicious, and Mukha, beginning. This ceremony is an elaboration of Shraddha, or offerings to the forefathers. The offerings are made to one's father, paternal, grandfather, paternal, great-grandfather, maternal grandfather, etc., etc., etc. 2. Mother, maternal grandmother, maternal great-grandmother, maternal great-great-grandmother, paternal grandmother, etc. When one offers oblations for their satisfaction, it is called Nandi Mukha karma. It also refers to the beginning of an auspicious ceremony or an extended Shraddha ceremony. A compiler of the Smritis has stated, quote, one should properly offer oblations to the forefathers through the rituals called Nandi Mukha. A householder should worship the forefathers through the ritual called Nandi Mukha on auspicious occasions like the marriage of sons or daughters, the formal entry into a newly built house, the name-giving ceremony of a child, the hair-cutting ceremony, the Garbhadan ceremony, and the ceremony of seeing the face of one's son for the first time. Paragraph. Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, the author of Vaishnava Smritis, has written in his Satkriya Sara Deepika, quote, Vaishnavas should not perform this ceremony out of fear of committing offenses against the holy names. In order to satisfy one's forefathers, one should remember Vishnu, worship the spiritual master, and give cloth and foodstuffs in charity to the Vaishnavas and Brahmanas according to one's ability. In this way, one's forefathers will be satisfied, unquote. There's also mention of worshipping Shasti, Sri Krishna. Description of that is. Don't see it. Okay, well, Ram married one wife, Krishna married 16,000, and Lord Chaitanya married 2. But in all cases, they're his own potencies. And it's a Leela. So the first marriage, as we recall, was really simple. And this one is really elaborate. Buddhimanta Khan. Buddhimanta Khan's name appears later when the associates of Lord Chaitanya are visiting in Puri. And at the end of their 4 months, they come before Lord Chaitanya. There's some exchange. He's mentioned there also. Buddhimanta Khan. Very wealthy and a benefactor of it's a grand marriage for Lord Chaitanya and Lakshmi Priya. Okay. 12 after 1. So my experience so far is with reading of Leela, there's not a whole lot of questions, but sometimes there's comments or reflection or some appreciation, something like that. So if anybody wants to share anything, comment anything, discuss anything, please do so.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I have one question. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't come in every Kali Yuga. So the Lord's incarnation that come, so he also recommends chanting Hare Krishna in that Kali Yuga?
Of course. It's the Yuga Dharma.
Okay. And the mantra remains the same. Hare Krishna Mahamantra,
Yeah.
that remains the same.
Yeah. The Vedas don't change.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
I don't know the detail, but I've heard from a qualified Brahmin that in the Madhva Sampradaya, they also chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, just as we do. Because it's a Vedic mantra. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the wonderful class. Maharaj, what we were speaking before about going deeper in bhakti.
About which?
About going deeper in bhakti.
Yeah.
So you mentioned gratitude. So how does gratitude lead to humility? And also what we can learn, like second part would be what we can learn from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about humility practically that we can apply in this life right now.
Well, you're presuming that gratitude leads to humility. But I don't know if that's a correct assumption. According to Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita, amanitvam, that's the first in the list of items of knowledge. So there's material, there's spiritual humility. And spiritual humility, in simple language, is I'm very tiny, God is great. Therefore I should serve him. That's spiritual humility. So if we're thinking I'm very small and God is very great, that's humility. Then something comes from God. Then comes just a feeling. Like, you have two lovely daughters, and they're receiving all the time. The acknowledgement of their receiving may be, off and on, but when there's a sense of having received, what to speak of tirelessly receiving, or being given service by mom and dad, when that touches the heart, that's gratitude. So my sense is humility precedes gratitude. Or without humility, one isn't going to feel grateful. One is going to say, one may say please and thank you. The behavior may be there, but gratitude doesn't move the heart. When gratitude moves the heart, then that's the seed of bhakti. I want to give back. So that's the first part of your questions, at least my response to the first part. And the second part is, remind me again what the second part was.
Maharaj, what can we learn from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about humility practically that we can apply right now?
Well, in his Leela, there's several turning points, but one of the really big ones is, according to Vrindavan Das, he was arrogant and confrontational, and no, he didn't spare anybody. Even, his dear friends, he would challenge them and tease them and taunt them and this and that. And what changed, or at least a changing point, was associated with Ishwar Puri. He served him. He offered prasad. Of course, it was mother prepared and offered, but he offered prasad. He spoke respectfully. He had that respectful regard, appropriately respectful regard. And then he did some service, further service of, listening for the purpose of making corrections. Although he said very humble, it's not possible for you to make mistakes. So then finally, he who was never defeated by anybody accepted defeat. So when there's regard for this is a teaching, a practical application teaching for us. When we hear from qualified sources, in Prabhupada's words, prashna is questions are following pranipat, or submission. Questions where there's no submission is useless. Prabhupada teaches that over and over. Inquisitiveness should be preceded by knowing who is the right person to ask, and when the right person to ask is asked, there's not a challenging attitude. Now, the pastime was definitely a challenging attitude. People would run the other way because they didn't want to be defeated, but they also didn't like the challenging attitude. So that's a practical application. When we're before qualified persons, there's some things, preliminary things that help us to receive their message, the submission and service. But then when understandings come, we're prepared to accept. Now, he brought up a particular point, but when he heard the refutation or the non-acceptance of his point, he could have gotten into his scholastic mood, but he put it to the side and was happy to be defeated. And of course, it's a pastime, but it's an instructive pastime. And for example, in practical application, we run across things that are in Prabhupada's teachings we may not understand. Or over here he says this, and over there he says that, and they seem to contradict. So we could get flustered or, not be submissive and not be in the right humble mood. The day will come and we will understand, but right now I don't understand. So we don't, even in our mind or thought, something's wrong here, on the Prabhupada side, rather than something is blocked over on this side and I don't understand yet. So with faith, when the right person, right authority is there, we're very happy to accept even we may not fully understand. And that faith is going to grow by the hearing process, and eventually we can understand. I remember very clearly an important instruction when 1970, the morning class was Bhagavatam, evening class Bhagavad Gita, and in 1970, Nectar Devotion was now available for the devotees. So we had a third class each day. Every day, 3 classes. And then questions came up about things that are in Nectar Devotion that we couldn't understand. Prabhupada's answer: if you don't understand it, read it again. And after reading again, you still don't understand it, read it again. And you continue reading it again and again until eventually you'll understand. That was his very simple answer. That takes faith to read it again and again and not flip out or, something wrong with this. Anyway, that's a practical application with Lord Chaitanya's humility. Of course, he's omniscient, so it was just a pastime to help us understand how he showed humility before Ishvara Puri. I think another nice one, because this was the starting point for this morning's discussion, or this midday's discussion, about how he dealt with Kashi Keshava Kashmiri. He was humble and cultured in his exchange. To become cultured is not something cosmetic. It's something that's inside, and it takes it's of the soul that it takes purification to become actually cultured, not just cosmetically cultured. What to speak of, our modern times. Like we could say, Western, but now it's not just Western, it's the culture of no culture. People say any darn thing at any time, in any way, and I'm just speaking the truth, man. No culture. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
In that section of Tapan Mishra, there was a verse that stated that he was chanting the mantra of Krishna day and night, but he still did not find peace as he was not practicing the other limbs of bhakti. And later on, when he approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu gives the instruction of congregational chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So it looks like the first mantra that is being referred to looks like the Krishna mantra, or the initiation mantra that is given. Is that the correct understanding?
I don't know. I mean, commonly, not only in our sampradaya, but elsewhere, the Gopal mantra is commonly accepted by, from the guru to the disciple. And Krishna's name is there, so it doesn't specify. I don't know specifically which mantra. And I was also noting, without doing the other limbs, but when it came to instruction, it just went to the chanting of the mantra again, without the other limbs. So that there are other limbs, the 9 processes of bhakti. Anyone else?
Question.
Take the mask, it's easier to hear.
Sorry.
Thank you. Then I can also see your face, it's nicer.
So in 13:8 to 12, in Bhagavad Gita, 13.8 to 12.
Yes.
We just discussed.
Yes.
So when I read it again and again, it says Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam Asakti Anabhishwanga Putra Dara Gruhadishu Nityam Cha Samachittvatvam Nishthanishtupatishu, and then the last one it says the bhakti is, you should do bhakti in a remote or alone, in privately. That's what the instructions, the purport says. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started the Sankirtan movement.
Sankirtan.
So it's the exact opposite. So
well, there can be divisions of activity. Japa and Sankirtan,
right,
for example. So to emphasize one doesn't mean not the other, and to emphasize the other doesn't mean not this one.
yeah, I don't know.
You follow?
Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Maharaj, one in that pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Tapan Mishra.
Yeah.
So Tapan Mishra saying, Mahaprabhu, I want to be with you. And Mahaprabhu told him to go to Varanasi and then he'll meet him there. So he has specific instructions for Tapan Mishra.
Yeah.
So in our tradition of guru and disciple, what a disciple should be like, does disciple should be always asking for specific instructions from his guru, or
Gurus
because
would
we
be-
have specific services
Gurus would be
assigned?
over exhausted. Too much. No, it's not that everyone that Lord Chaitanya gave such an instruction to. There was a specific, so he gave a specific. So the answer to your question is not necessarily, because there are general ones.
Yeah.
And then we should be, if there's some specific instruction, then we do the specific instruction, but otherwise we do the general ones. And let's just take book distribution. That's something for everybody. That's something for everybody. You'll probably appreciate this because you like book distribution. Once upon a time, 1972 or 73, the ISKCON Press, which was what was known previously, shifted to New York from Boston, because the Brooklyn Temple was in a neighborhood where there were warehouse space. And, the whole ISKCON Press became too big for that little single-family residence in Alston Street in Boston. So they shifted. So then there were two entities, the temple and ISKCON Press. So the temple had the policy that everybody went on Sankirtan. Everybody went on Sankirtan on Saturday. So the ISKCON Press was saying, but we have this important work to do. And then I wasn't involved in the tussle, but there was a tussle between ISKCON management and ISKCON Press. So Prabhupada wrote that the press, what's the use of their press work, the publication work, without the distribution? So they should also go at least once a week. For if not an hour every day, they should go, because there was 1 hour every day kind of thing. So they went on Saturdays. So that became part of our Saturday book. So it's something for everybody, distribution of books. So you don't need a particular instruction to say book distribution is for everybody. Now, that was at a time where we didn't have householders with jobs and the complexities of modern structures of things. But the emphasis was that's something for everybody. So I never wrote a letter to Prabhupada. I never received a letter. I didn't, you have a personal instruction. It was book distribution, because that's for everybody. And I wasn't feeling I need a personal instruction. But if there was some personal instruction, fantastic. So some persons, each of us are different. We don't need that. Or there's not something deficient in us if we don't ask and receive. It's different for each of us, a little different.
Thank you,
Okay.
Maharaj.
But you receive an instruction, you better be ready to do it. Now, Prabhupada received an instruction, but there was a delay in his doing, but he did. A mission impossible, but he did, because it was an instruction. He prepared, and then he did. He got some, push and some assist from others. We have some online.
Sneha Pali Mataji has a very similar question as Raghunandan Prabhu did. Her question
If it's the
is
same question, we don't need to repeat it.
okay, has a different ending.
Okay.
So, Tapan Mishra, it was said that he did not attain peace because he was not performing other devotional services, but only chanting his Krishna mantra. We know from other sources that if one performs one type of devotional service properly, then one can attain success in devotional life. Why did Vrindavan Das Thakur say that for Tapan Mishra?
That's a really good question. Congratulations for giving a really good question. He should have been satisfied. So there. So you're right, and Vrindavan Das is not right. I don't have an answer for that. I don't have an answer. You want to take your book and see if there's some answer to that? Is this your book?
Her second question is, I'm curious to know if Lord Chaitanya visited Dwarka, because we heard that in the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur commentary in one of the earlier sessions.
Did Lord Chaitanya visit Dwarka? That's her question. I don't recall mention. But I don't know, I don't know enough to say, no, he didn't. So there's another research question to be looked up. She's got some tough questions, this lady. Prematrangani, if you're listening, see if you can find that reference in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya's travels. See if you can find reference of Dwarka.
This is from Sanchari. She says, Guru Maharaj, in thinking about Lord Chaitanya's appearance, it seems that he is the only incarnation who goes through all the stages of life except Vanaprastha. Is there a reason why this is the case, and is there a connection between the Lord showing all stages to his appearance in Kali Yuga?
There's no other incarnation at all that undergoes sannyas, because what's the Lord renouncing? Now, in the case of, for example, in the case of Vamana or in the case of Kapila Dev, there's no marriage, there's no consort, there's certainly no sannyas. But the Lord separating himself by renunciation from his eternal consort, there is no other, and it has everything to do with his lila of the mood of a devotee. The Lord in the mood of a devotee. He exhibited his divinity, and then he exhibited further and further this mood of a devotee of the Lord. So it has everything to do with that.
Mataji, Hare Krishna Maharaj, Mahaprabhu gave love of Godhead to Mother Narayani at the age of 4, also to Jagai and Madai on request of Lord Nityananda, even when they offended him. Those who are trying to chant, trying to focus, what do they need to pray to Mahaprabhu to get that kind of mercy?
Well, you don't want to become Jagai and Madhai, first of all. But because the Lord instructed them to surrender, and they saw the consequences, at least Jagai saw the consequences, if not, he surrendered. So he got that mercy because he surrendered. And seeing that mercy that his brother got, Madhai also surrendered. So, the principle of learning is you hear or you see in the lives of others. It's kind of like Shruti and Smriti, in that distinction. So if you see that others are getting mercy, how can I get that mercy? The eagerness to get that mercy is the eligibility to get mercy. However you get eagerness to get mercy. Did you find the answer? Where is it? Okay. Okay, text 118, because we went as far as 119. Text 118 reads, he silently chanted his Krishna mantra day and night, but since he was not practicing other important limbs of devotional service, he could not achieve peace. Purport. The word so yasti So yasti, or a corruption of the Sanskrit word swasti, means steadiness of mind or peacefulness, paragraph. Although he was day and night engaged in chanting the mantras of his worshipable Lord, he did not achieve peace of mind. In devotional scriptures, there are 64 limbs of sadhana described. Among these limbs of sadhana, 5 limbs have been described as the best. Among these 5, the topmost limb of sadhana, congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, is the path demonstrated by Sri Chaitanya Chandra. None of the limbs of devotional service can be formed properly until and unless one accepts the support of chanting the holy names. Without sadhana, one can never achieve peace of mind. The purport of this statement is that chanting of the holy names, the basis of pleasing Krishna, is the only sadhana, and until one develops love for Krishna, which is the only sadhya, achieving perfection of sadhana is difficult and incomplete. To me, it's not clear. The other limbs, it's not, that particular reference is not clear. It's the reference here is until you achieve the purity of sadhya or love, then it's incomplete. You're not going to be peaceful until the perfectional stage or the pure stage is reached. But the explanation of the other limbs is not here, as far as my reading. How are we doing? Do you have more? Okay. Anything else in the room? Or otherwise we're done. Yes? Could you look one more time for the Shasti worship that's mentioned in that text?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. I was listening to the text you were reading, and it said that...
Put the microphone closer.
Yeah, you read that our relationship, parents, brothers, sister, child, these are all bodily. And it's so hard to practically accept it, because when we are hurt through our children or through our parents, it's so hard to not like some pains are ongoing.
Naturally.
So how do we deal with those?
Well, you just accept that you're a fallible living entity. It's human to feel those pains. You wouldn't be human if you didn't feel those pains. So your question is how to handle them. You just accept that that's part of conditional life. Then how to deal with negative emotions. Okay, starting with acceptance, then comes a whole set of lessons about processing the fact that I'm in conditional life and I'm not a transcendentalist yet. I understand the philosophy. I'm not the body. So I conducted an 8-hour seminar on the art of meditation, something negative emotions, dealing with negative emotions. And there's a lot of techniques that just help you be less attached. And one of those less attached principles, it comes straight from people that deal with 1-800 suicide hotlines. It's helping people become detached from that negative emotion. So it goes like this. There are different ways of doing it, but there's a screen, like let's say a computer screen or a television screen. It's just a screen. And then you see an image on the screen, and then you feel something in relation to the image that's on the screen. You see something serene, or you see something vicious, or you see something, and you feel something. So, but you're neither the image on the screen nor the emotion connected to the image on the screen. You're the observer. One of the keys of processing negative emotions is knowledge and detachment. That emotion and the object of that emotion is not you. Knowledge and detachment. Now he's in his scholastic pastime and he's speaking knowledge and detachment. It's not so dissimilar. It's quite similar to the story of King Chitraketu and his son that dies, and Narada brings his son back to life. And it's, your father is lamenting, please come back and pacify your father. The boy sits up and looks around, looks just right at Narada, didn't even look around. Said, who's my father? I've had so many fathers. I was with my original father, so, let me go to my original father. He lies back down. Whoa. I mean, he said many other things, but knowledge and detachment, I'm not that emotion. We have expectations of happiness from objects. Like that example that's in the Bhagavatam of a miser that gets some wealth and then loses it. He misplaces it. Then he's like, So when you have expectation for happiness from an object, it's a setup for negative emotion. So what to do? Because you have a body, and you have mother and father, and if you're a parent, you have children, you have a husband or wife, a spouse, and your objects personified that there's attachment for. It's natural. You'd be a terrible mom if you didn't have attachment for your kids. You'd be a terrible mom. You got to have some attachment. So now then comes another teaching, not too much, not inordinate, because too much then it covers the soul, it covers Krishna, and comes the Maya, the negative emotion program. You follow? So it's a matter of progressing spiritually towards a spiritual conception of knowledge and detachment, and your mission with your family members, etc., is to serve Krishna. And it's not always going to be a smooth ride. But whether the ride is smooth or bumpy, it's an opportunity to serve Krishna. Accept the reality of whatever the reality is. In the language of stress management, life throws rocks at you and it hurts. That's, stress management 101. Now what are you going to do? Because that's what your question is. It hurts. So then there's things that you can do with stress management to mitigate and manage the stress management. And then that helps you get to the spiritual position where you can see spiritually. Here's a spirit soul, and my relationship with this spirit soul is service to Krishna. I'm serving as a mother, I'm serving as a friend, I'm serving as a wife, I'm serving as a whatever. And it's in relation to Krishna, and there are varieties of service to Krishna. That's at the center. And the circumstance is what it is. I'm accepting the circumstance. And it's not, pleasant or unpleasant, it is what it is. So I'm in acceptance. I can stay very clear-headed about what's the proper way to be in service. And if you lose that perspective of service, you're just carried away by the snowball effect of the emotion. And that's what the 1-800 suicide hotlines deal with. People that are just carried away and forget themselves and any other higher purpose. So there's other things one can do. It's like a whole 8-hour seminar. You do modes of goodness things so that when you're in the mode of goodness, you can handle the negative emotion better. You can still be discriminating what to do about this situation, that situation. If you don't have that mode of goodness in your life, you're just inundated by it. It gets magnified way out of proportion. Completely covers. So those are some points.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. That was.
There's a 8-hour seminar on the topic.
Is it available online?
Art of meditation, overcoming negative emotions. And if you remind me, I'll send the link because people ask this all the time. So there's there's images and questions, answers, and the whole thing. Different audiences, sometimes college kids, sometimes homes, different audiences.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
It's a big one where we have bodies and minds. And it doesn't always match the spiritual conception. You have anything? No? More kirtan. Okay. Are we done? We're done. Thank you very much. Prabhupada Ki Jai.